developer. Want to get everybody together today. We have two different streams going. First stream we have is our live stream in the room. Call that something funny. Then we have our WebEx stream. Hi, WebEx. Hi, WebEx. So we have a lot more people than we would normally have today, and because normally we have a few people in the room, and then nobody else can attend. So today's our first WebEx. So hi to all the WebExers. Hi again. So we have two really great presentations today. We'll have one presentation by Chris and another by Courtney. Courtney is actually going to be giving a workshop. So we'll get everybody here in the room on the Wi-Fi network. If you want to participate, it's going to be about Sass and how to use Sass. So we'll get you running. I believe we're using CodePen for that, so you don't have to install anything on your machine or anything like that. We'll also be going through it on here. The session will be recorded for future viewing, and yeah, that's about it. Afterwards, I wanted to introduce a new feature to the meetings called Pick of the Month. So our presenters will have something that they'd like to just sort of plug for, either something they're doing or something that they find useful, anything really. Google is a plug sometimes, or Pick sometimes, how to use Google. But yeah, so without further ado, I will let Chris take the stage.
Hello, everyone. I know a handful of you around here. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris. A little bit of background on me. I have been primarily a back-end PHP developer in my entire professional career. I've been working with startups and freelance work for the last 15 years or so. I got hired at the state as somebody that understands PHP when the word Drupal started flying around here a couple of years ago. One of my very first tasks that I was assigned was to build custom functionality into the Department of State site. It was actually and that custom functionality ended up being in the form of a Drupal module, which brings us to my topic today. What is a module? Well, let's see. See how slow this thing is. Very slow. So, the term module is used extensively throughout the history of software development. I think my first experience with coding a module was in a class in my first year of college, learning how to code in Visual Basic 6. I'm not here to talk about that today, though. So, the definition of the module from Webster is one of a set of parts that can be connected or combined to build or complete something, or a part of a computer or computer program that does a particular job. So how does that apply to Drupal? So the definition sums it up pretty well. Drupal module is a bundle of code or a directory of files that can be is isolated from Drupal core itself. It can easily be dropped into a site for added functionality, or pulled out if you need to remove that functionality for whatever reason. From a developer's perspective, a Drupal module allows you to hook into the Drupal API. This allows you to add and modify functionality to any site. If you're interested in coding a Drupal module, Drupal.org provides great community-driven documentation, so it's a great learning spot. From a site builder perspective, a Drupal module allows you to easily turn on and off added functionality to a site. Drupal.org provides an extensive library of modules that is searchable. The most part, the majority of any added functionality that you would need for a site, you can probably find it at Drupal.org. Chances are you don't need to actually custom code anything, you can find it there. So what can a module do? For this, I used a couple of examples of top contributed modules from Drupal.org. Views is a module that, if you've had any experience with Drupal at all, you've probably either heard about or probably in place. It allows you to easily create lists of content from any type of content from the site. An example of that would be a list of upcoming events, a list of top products, a list of favorites. As you can tell, that's probably a very popular module because of the functionality that it can add. Another top contributed module, I think it's third on the list, maybe fourth, is Path Auto. Drupal Box assigns an ID to every single piece of content that you add to the system. That ID is used for the URL path. So any piece of content that you add to the system you can access by going to your .com/node/ID number. What Path Auto does it allows a site builder to define patterns based on your content for the URL. So what you can do is you can make a URL very easily readable and better for SEO purposes. So you can change .com/node/45 to, if it's a piece, an article piece of content, article/title of article. Pretty handy. So how can we utilize these modules? So there's many differences, but this one shows, this is a small difference. So what all right, let me start over. There are many differences between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. But there are still tons of Drupal 7 sites out there. And I figured showing the differences between the two might be helpful for anybody that's interested. But utilizing a module is as simple as downloading that module from Drupal.org and dropping it into a designated location within your site. Drupal 7, as you can see here, is under .group sites, all modules. And Drupal 8 recently simplified it a little bit. It's under the top level /modules directory. Also, for further organization, you can create subdirectories within that modules directory. As you see in the example for 7, there's a contrib directly underneath modules. You can have a contrib or a custom module subdirectory for your custom and your contributed modules. Once the files have been added to the correct location, Drupal will automatically make them available. As you can see here, Drupal 7 modules can be installed and enabled from the modules listing page. In Drupal 8, modules can be installed from the extend listing page. There's a slight difference between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 here as well. It's the states of the modules. With Drupal 7, you could have an installed module, an enabled module, and an uninstalled module. Drupal 8 is now just installed or uninstalled. Once you install it, you can enable it. Once you enable it, is installing it. It's a little bit of a difference there. Also, since this is a beginner's talk, I didn't want to elaborate too much, but you can, through the command line tool Drush, you can install modules using a variation of the command, right, like this. So how is all of this working? Here's a file structure of a Drupal 7 module. This is the New York State Universal Navigation Drupal 7 module. It's made up of 8 functional files and a few text files. The info file is a simple text-based file that sets key value pairs. Drupal uses this info file to share information about the module to the system itself. This is where you define the name, your description, your version of your module. This is where Drupal gets that information, put it on that module listings page or that extend listing page. This is also where you can import style sheets and scripting files for such as JavaScript, so the module knows where to find those files. The next important file within the module is the .module file. Again, this is just Drupal 7. This is the first place where you're going to find logic. This is strictly a PHP file, and it's used to utilize Drupal hooks and the Drupal API. And quite honestly, all you need is that info file and this .module file, and you can have a fully functional Drupal 7 module. But you can add many more files. You can add your style sheets. You can add your JavaScript files. You can add include files, which are just extra PHP files, and template files to help you render HTML to a page. So here's the file structure for a Drupal 8 module. Much different. It's made up of many more files than a Drupal 7 module. The largest difference here is that Drupal 8 is object-oriented, where Drupal 7 is not. That's a totally different discussion, but it's the main reason behind the difference. Drupal 8 uses YAML files for configuration. As you can see here, there is a .info.yaml file that works the same way as the .info file in Drupal 7. There's also a handful of other YAML files. So there's a routing YAML file, which handles the pages of the site. So you can define certain pages within a site that your module is going to be using, which is where you define your module-specific permissions. And that's the configuration of Drupal 8. The logic is actually placed in the .src file or directory. As you can see right there, there's a few files within there. This follows the Symfony PHP framework structure. Symfony is an object-oriented PHP framework that was chosen for Drupal 8 at the beginning of its development. Diving into the Symfony documentation, you can see the similarities between core Symfony development and Drupal 8 module development. I'm still in the midst of learning all of this, so if you want to find out some more information, definitely check out Drupal.org. There's a bunch of other resources out there that I can send anybody if anybody has questions. Oh, and there's an example of the info YAML file in Drupal 8, very similar to the info file in Drupal 7, just a slightly different format. So this is great. All this functionality is available at your disposal. But where is it all coming from? Well, it's coming from you. It's coming from your colleagues. Bob down the street, Susie in Nebraska. Drupal.org is open source. All of Drupal is open source. Everything's developed by the community. The modules themselves, core itself. If you go to any project page on Drupal.org, there's an example of views. Right in the top right corner, they have all the maintainers for the site with their usernames present. If you dive a little deeper, you can see every single person that's committed code to that project. If you dive even deeper, you can see every single commit. And as a developer, if you can submit patches to any project, be it a module, be it a core, and that's how you contribute back to the community. Create a patch, post it on their issue page, and you can have a conversation with the maintainers, and your code could potentially be submitted to the project itself. And that's it for now. There's my email address if anybody wants to chat. Drupal username, and that's about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Awesome stuff. Courtney just ran out of the room. I believe I'll kill some time while we wait for her to come back. Just wanted to make sure that, is everybody in the room on the Wi-Fi network? Not yet. Not yet? Okay, we'll get you on the Wi-Fi. You guys on Wi-Fi? All right. So we'll be using CodePen for the development in Sass. If Courtney will give all the URLs and everything for that. And I'll get you all set up here. And so we'll just have a quick 5-minute break or so, and then come back and we'll get the next presentation up and running.
I know. It just jumped me on that as well. Their campaign.
Yeah, I think so.
This advice. Flavor. Vouchable.
Right.
Yes. JPs are hard. First of all, like they're just all your they have the other one there too. It's you put in a defense at the same time, like you're just trying to get reorient yourself to like what's successful there. It could be getting your clothes on, really just getting your hats off. It's all good. I mean, some days I'm much better at, like, carrying that. Give a lot.
You know, when I hear all these people with
Ups and downs for sure. Right. Then you start feeling how much.
oh, yeah. You can sit till 11 and not think about it.
Yeah. So much time. Although I get up this morning for a run at like 5:30. I don't do that now. When I do, I feel like I'm better.
Right.
Usually I'm using two. Those are pretty much the only two that actually do it like that. So I'm gonna work here. I noticed it like they move back and go and I'm tired. What? Who?
When it's partnership work.
We have a yeah, we see it.
I like art.
It is really nice. It's very transactional. Sass.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So Chris was awesome. Let's give him a little round of applause. He did a great job himself. All right. So welcome to my presentation about Sass called Sasstastic. Beginner's Guide to Understanding Sass. Just have to give it a minute. It's a little slow. I need a minute now. There we go. Who is this awesome person? Many of you may know who I am, but for those of you who don't, my name is Courtney Jordan. I'm a front-end designer developer for the revenue and transportation cluster. I'm also a graphic artist, photographer, and typographer. I worked on the Department of Labor's Superpowers locator, which was not only the first responsive website in New York State, it was also one of the first sites to be used with Sass. So that's really cool. And I'm also an addict of Star Wars, Totoro, and cats. Can't get cats. And feel free to check me out on Twitter, and you can check out my projects on GitHub. So what is Sass? Any minute now. There we go. What is Sass? All right. So in the beginning, Sass was basically read like stereo instructions. It felt like you were trying to put something together from IKEA, and it was a hot mess. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to follow. The documentation's more thorough and clear. So it's a lot more user-friendly. It looks scary at first, but I assure you it's awesome and it's fun. So Sass stands for Syntactically Awesome StyleSheets. I can't make this up. It's literally what it's called because it's awesome. So it was developed in 2006 by Hampton Caitlin. He is the self-declared most awesome person in the history of the internet, which I beg to differ because I think Ethan Marcotte is the most coolest person on the internet. So Sass is a pre-processing language that allows developers to write their styles in Sass, and then they can compile it into CSS. Sass was the original syntax. In later years, SCSS was then added. And it's flexible and it's fun. I can't stress just how fun it is. So the difference is with Sass, it was created by Ruby developers. So it has Ruby-like syntax. It can be a little difficult to read because it's very clean and dry. And if you miss one indent, it could risk breaking your whole style sheet. I've been there. It's not fun trying to find what went wrong. Now, with SCSS, it's CSS-like. So it's really easy to follow. It's easier to read because you have your curly brackets and your semicolons that you typically have in CSS. However, over-indenting can cause readability issues. If you go down like 30 indentations, you're going to get a little lost in your code and it's not going to look so pretty. So what can it do? I apologize for the lag. You can create, in a minute now, dramatic pause. Okay. It'll eventually catch up with me. Oh, there it goes. You can create variables. Variables can be created to store colors and fonts and padding and margin and anything you could think of you would use with a CSS style. Anything you want to reuse, literally anything. So to create a variable, you're going to use a $sign and name it whatever you want. So say you want to use blue for all your headers. You can just put $blue and put your hex value behind it, and then just put $blue throughout your code. So instead of having to go throughout your CSS and find all the locations where you declared this color, you can change it in one spot, and then it takes effect throughout your style sheet. That's pretty awesome. You can also indent code. So when writing HTML, developers usually indent their code so it's easier to read, so you can find, you know, your divs and your elements and what have you. And Sass can do the same thing. Sass allows developers to write with indented code. Thus, the code is easier to read and it's easier to troubleshoot, as you can see in the example. Now, the biggest advantage is to remove the redundancy of the CSS style classes. So how many of you have rewritten the same class in your style sheet like 5 or 10 or more times? And yeah, that pretty much comes to an end with Sass. There's no more reiterating the same starting style selectors for each rule, so that is pretty awesome. But, again, you want to use precaution, because overly indented code can cause readability issues. I actually, on one of my projects I was working on, I indented so much, because also, too, I was new to Sass, so I was really excited and giddy. I indented a little too much, and I broke my code, and it was a hot mess. But I've learned the error of my ways, and I'm more seasoned now, so I won't make that mistake again. Another cool thing you can do with Sass is you can create and a mix and lets you make groups with your CSS properties that you can reuse. So they're great for vendor prefixes. No more writing 4 lines of code for a button radius over and over and over again. You can write 4 lines of code and then just write one. How awesome is that? You can also create partials, and there are files that contain snippets of code, and it's a great way to keep your CSS organized and maintained. So if you're working with, say, your website branding colors, you don't have to put them just in that style sheet. You can actually simplify it and organize it more and put them in a specific color sheet. So if you want to go and change your colors, you can just refer to the color sheet and your colors there. And then once it compiles, it will add to the CSS page. You can also import your code styles, thus relating with the partials. Import allows for the code to be split up into more smaller maintainable snippets of code. So you can keep your fonts in the font file, you can keep your colors in the color file, and import them into a primary style sheet. Cool beans. So here's some of the compiling tools. There's CodeKit, FreeProf, and Koala. Now, CodeKit is pretty awesome, but it's for Mac only. But if you have a Mac, then that's okay. Flat fee, it's like $32. It's pretty good. A lot of developers in the community use it. Rave reviews. Now, for those that don't have Mac, there is FreeProf. And FreeProf can be used on all platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it's $29. I use FreeProf. I like it. I have had an issue. I like the fact that whenever I make a change, I get notified that it's good or it's bad, and then it tells me in the line of code where the error is. So I can go directly to it and fix it, no problem. And then there's Koala. Koala is free, and it's available on all platforms. I've heard good things about it. I have not used it, but I have some friends that use it, and they've said good things about it. So all in all, how does Sass work? You're going to write your Sass files. You're then going to use your compiler to compile that Sass into a CSS sheet that can then be used by your website. Easy peasy. So now we're going to jump into our little interactive demo. Feel free to visit the URL at the bottom of your screen. And then when your code pen is loaded, you'll see 3 boxes at the top, one for HTML, one for CSS, and one for JavaScript. Let's just close out that cd.pn.io, uppercase X, uppercase B, uppercase Q, uppercase O, and R. I figured it'd be easier just to say it because still.
cdpn.io. JFQ. Everybody got it?
I think he said /E, and it's not /E, it's /J.
Really? This slide? I was able to pull it up, so.
I'm there now.
Okay.
Getting ready.
Actually, don't even need the /E.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
Well, you can still go to, like that pulls up the actual stuff.
Okay. So we have the demo. Okay. So we're just basically going to focus on the CSS. It's already been set up to use as CSS. If you have a CodePen account, feel free to save it to your account if you'd like. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to change the colors of the shapes. I included a link if you want to use text values for this presentation. I'm just going to use flat up blue, pink, and purple. So let's change all three of the shapes, rectangle, square, and the circle. I've already defined some colors up at the top. So you're going to create your variable. You can give it a value. Okay. Then we're going to go down to the shapes. You can go down to rectangle, and we're going to locate the background color. And I'm changing my rectangle to sky blue. And then scroll down to your circle. There it goes. And square.
Does it automatically show the changes, or is it, or does he have to refresh?
We might have a little bit of lag in the room,
Okay.
so it might take a minute.
On your screen, it should be updated.
But yeah.
We can unhide the
Awesome. So we changed their color. See how easy that was? Like, how awesome is that? And say, you know, like, you don't want the rectangle to be sky blue. You want it to be orange. This isn't good practice, but, I mean, you can just change it right there, the variable, and bam. I didn't even have to go in the code. How awesome is that? But I'm going to change it back to sky blue. Okay. So now moving on to 2. Are we all set for 2? Yeah? Okay. We're going to change the color of the shapes when hovered and clicked. So I've already created 2 variables. One is dark blue, and one is blue. So if you go back down to rectangle, and this is where we can practice our indentation as well. For rectangle, I have an anchor tag, and then inside I have hover and active. Now instead of having to reuse A over and over again, you can use an ampersand and, you know, write hover and active instead. Okay, so forgive my A anchor. Remove the A. There it goes. And that's how we troubleshoot.
Alright, just walk everybody through that really quick. So remove the anchor again.
Hmm?
There's a little lag in the WebEx. Just explain how the
Okay.
anchor.
So there was a anchor in the rectangle code. You want to remove that A and its ending bracket, curly bracket. So then you should just have an ampersand hover and an ampersand active.
Everybody got it?
And then if you want, feel free to move down to circle and square. And you can change the colors to whatever you'd like for hover and active.
Yeah.
Now, on a side note, if, say, for some reason, I advise against this, but just for testing purposes, if you wanted to change some of your colors, you can also add them and then just have your one color, and then you can change it up at the top to whatever you deem fit. Okay, are we all set with 2? Yep. Cool. All right. So removing out 3, we're going to add margins surrounding the shapes. So what we'll do is we can create a variable named shape margin and give it a border radius of 5, or no, excuse me, I'm making a 4. And then when you're all set there, you can locate the rectangle class and add in margin and the variable, and it will take that margin that you declared. All right. But if you want to do something easier than having to add it in 3 spots, you can combine all the shapes. you can write it in one spot, and it will take the margin. You don't have to write it 3 times. If you don't want to, you can write it just in one spot. Are we all set with step 3? Come on, guys, you gotta talk to me. Instead of my reader, I wish I was. That'd be cool. Okay, so let's move on. What was that?
That's the next session.
Oh my goodness.
Migrating.
Oh my goodness. All right, so moving on to step 4, we're going to create a mixin to round the rectangle and square corners. So I've already created a mixin up above. Feel free to use this or border radius. And we've given it a variable of radius. So we have our WebKit and mods and so forth, border radiuses. If we go down to our shape, and then mixin with its mixin name, and give it its radius. And as you can see, the rectangle, the radius has changed. And the beauty of this is you can change it in one spot if you want to make it 100. Which now it doesn't look like a rectangle anymore. It looks kind of like a bill. You can do that. And there we go. That was the awesome Sass exercise. Yay! Oh wait, there's still more.
Whoa.
Oh, y'all thought you were done.
Blowing
Oh
our
my
minds
goodness.
over here.
Okay. So, I'm just, is it okay if I just leave it like that? Because I'm going to go up. Yeah, okay, cool. Alright, so I have some awesome resources. So there's the official Sass website, which is right here. If you want to learn Sass, I would advise you click on the Learn Sass link, and it literally breaks everything down if you want to learn about variables, nesting, import, what have you, mixin. It will take you down there. And best of all, since SCSS is so popular, it defaults to that versus Sass, so it can get all kinds of confusing right there. So that's really cool. There is also Sass for web designers. I've actually read this book and own this book. It's really awesome. It's great for when you're learning Sass. It gives a pretty good introduction, and it's pretty well-rounded. So, let's see. Code School. Now, Code School you have to pay for, but it's pretty good. I've used Code School in the past. They have a couple free, well, they have one free course based on a foundation, and I mean, it's pretty good. Now, this is the Sass course through Treehouse. It's also paid per month, same as Code School. Code School is paid per month, but the best thing is the guy that makes Sass teaches this. So, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You're actually going to learn from the gentleman that created Sass. Highly recommend this course. And then, if you're looking for something, you know, that's free, you can check out the Sass Way. They have beginner, intermediate, advanced tutorials you can check out. I've used this when I first started learning Sass, and it worked pretty good for me. So, those are the resources. And that's the end. Thanks for coming. Have a sassy day. Now, do we have any questions? No questions.
How deep should you be testing your selectors?
That's a good question. I try to shoot for 10 if I can.
You really have a number?
10 deep?
Okay, so the first time I started writing Sass, I actually went like 40 deep. I won't admit that, but I said it. Yeah, I went like 40 deep or something.
That's like
I got
rolling it.
I got too carried away. I try to keep it as low as I can. I only go as deep as I need to go. So.
What other guides have you seen in Sass, using Sass over the years, besides just nesting, obviously? Like, are there any other, like, patterns that you see repeating that you find yourself falling into, or you've seen other people's Sass that, maybe?
Well, I can tell you something funny. When you start writing in Sass, it's hard to go back to writing pure CSS because you find yourself indenting.
Right.
And I've done that on numerous occasions. I've indented all my code. I'm like, oh, wait, this is for just pure CSS, and I wrote it all in Sass. So I have to go back and fix it. That's happened. It's hard to break away from that. That and maybe the partials might be kind of a screw up. I've seen so many different ways of doing it. Some people get overly complex, and it's to the point like their project, there's 50 imports. Like, that's a bit of an overkill. You don't really need 50. I typically use it for like fonts and colors and next ones. I've used it for media queries. No.
Do you see it as a problem to add too much logic to your Sass, as far as, because you can build some pretty complex functions, and do you try to avoid some of that deeper logic, or?
Yet. But when I do, I can answer your question. Everything's been pretty flatline.
Cool.
Easy to follow. So. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for coming out. If you want to check me out on Twitter, I try to update it when I can. And then on GitHub, like I have some really cool projects on GitHub that I've worked on that have some Sass. Or if you like CodePen, you can always check me out on CodePen. And I have actually some projects that I've used Sass with on here. So, cool stuff. Okay, that's it.
So, all right, so thanks, Courtney. Just wanted to say the WebEx has been having people have been having some audio issues. I think we're going to skip the video portion of the WebEx for next time around, just to make sure that we have a nice, clear audio, and the video syncing will be a little bit better next time. So again, this first time we're still trying this all out, getting everything working out all the kinks here. So I wanted to talk about Drupal 8 and a little bit of Drupal, I'm going to call it Drupal maintenance in a few minutes here over stuff that I've been doing the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to talk about our picks of the week, or the picks of the month. Courtney's got hers. Chris will come up and talk about his really quick. And my pick of the week is Drush. Pick of the month, Drush. Because I've been using Drush more and more every single day, and it's just been, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm going to tell you about doing later on if it were not for Drush, because it makes life so much easier. Getting it set up on your server is super simple once you know how to do it, and you got good networking, people Drush is the awesome. Getting it set up is pretty easy. So Courtney's got hers. Chris will talk about his really quick, and then I just wanted to, since we still got some time here, just talk about some maintenance things, things to keep an eye on to make sure that your sites are running as fast as they can be.
So I need to share my screen or anything?
No, just talking about it.
I can share my computer around.
Unless you have something to show about it. Yeah, go ahead.
So I can just click the start my video button by my name.
I think so.
It says you were sharing your screen. It'll probably load. Oh, it quit.
Courtney? That presentation actually had available, some, later date.
Yeah, I can shoot out a URL.
Okay.
You can check it out.
We got a couple of Sass novices here, so.
Well, too, if you have any questions, you can always hit me up at courtney.jordan@its.gov, and I'd be more than happy to work with you and answer what questions you have.
Okay, thanks.
Microsoft.
Set you back.
I'm just gonna close this out because one thing
Oh, so it's all about doing the processes global. We're spelling out fast. Yeah.
she gave me a whole Feels so bad.
I can just hit join.
You need to join.
Actually presenting right from that screen.
Oh, I am? Oh, wow, cool, awesome, okay. Okay. Disregard the jellyfish thing in the background. This is CodePen, and CodePen is amazing. But why is it amazing? It's amazing because if you want to work on a little snippet of code, say like you want to make an expandable menu, you don't want to mess with like your environment, you can go into CodePen and set up a little environment of your own. You can do it from home too. How awesome is that? I haven't had enough coffee yet, FYI. So, I'm going to log in. I can show you the awesomeness of what is CodePen. Once I can log in. So another really cool thing about CodePen is when you make an account, you can sync it with your GitHub. You can sync it with your GitHub, with your Facebook, or with your Twitter. I sync mine up with GitHub, so whenever I go in, I can hit the logging in with GitHub, which now that happens. I'm not having any luck right now. My goodness. Okay, there we go. So you don't need an account to work with CodePen. I mean, you can just do it on the fly. But the bonus is if you have an account, you can save your pens. You can, like make changes or what have you. The cool thing too is recent pens that you've worked on. We have the awesome Sass exercise that came up as a recent pen. Other members in the community can check out your code, work it, mess with it, offer a better solution, or vice versa. You can do the same for them. There's also some really cool pens from the community that are picked. You can check out what other people are doing, see what kind of technologies they're using. So, check out Starry Night. So you can check out like the settings in the CSS. You can see what they use. But they're not using a CSS processor, but they wanted to use one. CSS. And you can add like external CSS pages if you want, and it's the same thing with JavaScript and HTML. You can even add in, like, you can add classes to the HTML. You can add stuff to the head if you need to. The beginning gobbledygook, and like to start out your website. You can flat out just go and start making divs, like right here. There's a div called stars and twinkling clouds, and then all the classes are defined here. And then this laptop is scary. It's not a Mac. You can change the height. You can change the font. You can change the color. Oh, my Lisa. It just keeps getting worse. Okay. You can change the color. I'm going to make it orange because I can. And then if you look, they're turning orange. And then on your own profile, too, you can check to see, like, people will fork your stuff, people will actually like your stuff, which is kind of fun. You can see how many people have viewed your pins. I just think that's kind of neat. And that's CodePen. CodePen's awesome. You should totally use it. It's an awesome, awesome tool. Sign up today. You want to talk? Sure. Come on down.
So my pick was the Symfony PHP framework. With all the development we've been doing with Drupal 8 over the last month, so I wanted to actually get into what it's based off of. And it's a great PHP framework. I've had experience with some of the older ones, CodeIgnite, for example. I've had a lot of experience with. Symfony just feels more modern. It feels really good if you're a PHP builder. And definitely recommend checking it out. It's SYMFONY, and I think it's symfony.com. We'll check on that, but that's a great pick for a PHP framework. Thumbs up. Short and sweet.
Cool. So I'm just gonna use this guy over here.
Your brain. It's got a mind of its own.
My favorite thing right now that I've been using a lot, again, is Drush, and the website drushcommands.com. It covers up to Drush 8. There's some, I don't know what real changes in between Drush 8 and 9 alpha on my internet site. The big thing that I wanted to talk about, so for me right now, so I just started a new job at the beginning of the month. I'm now at the New York State General's office, doing web development there. We're using Drupal for all of our public internet sites, and coming in, I have some sort of, I guess I'd say, some high standards for what I want to see in development environments, what I want to see in my production environments, how fast I want things to run, et cetera, et cetera. And the big thing that I wanted to do was something that Justin worked on really, really hard back when we were at State Police, and that was syncing the databases between multiple environments to each other, so that you should never be pushing your database from dev to stage to production. Your database should stay on production because that's where your content is, right? Is if you're, and we know that you're adding a new view or making a change to a view, that all gets stored in your database, and in order to make that production ready, you need to either completely step-by-step do exactly what you did on your dev site in production, or you need to push your database up from dev to production. Or the third option is features. So we featurized everything on our site, and we were syncing our database back from production so that we would get the latest version of all of the content that had been produced from production down to our development environment so that we could see live what we were doing, as well as module configurations and anything that needed to be changed. So I set out on a quest to be able to sync my SQL databases from production down to our development environment. First thing that needed to happen was I needed to install Drush. So installing Drush on a server, if you don't have Drush installed on your server, is a quick Google search, install Drush, and you want to go to the Drush docs. You don't want to go to the Drush page on Drupal.org, because the Drush page on Drupal.org is no longer updated because they they moved their code over to GitHub, and they have this docs page, docs.drush.org, and this is as simple as it is to install on your local server environment. So if you have a server that you have full control over, it is, as long as you have the permission to do a wget, or you can do an SSTP, move that drush.far file into, or phar, or far, I don't even know how you say that, I'm just going to say far. Far file, you move that onto your server, and then you change module, and then you move it to your thing, and then you drush init, and then you hit yes, and everything works fine. So that gives you Drush access on your local server. So I had to do all this stuff, SSH'd in, had all that capability, Drush was running on the servers. Well, now I needed to install it and be able to run it off of my Windows machine in order to access it. So the easiest way to install Drush on Windows is install Acquia Dev Desktop. Whether you're going to use Acquia Dev Desktop or not for anything else, you're going to use it for Drush. So it's the easiest way to install Drush. So install Acquia Dev Desktop. Set up my now I'm not going to get into how to set up Drush alias files here, but basically created an alias for all three of my environments. So now I'm able to communicate back and forth. Well, we didn't have SSH keys access turned on or configured properly on the server, so every time I did a Drush command on any of my servers, I'd have to type in my username and password, or type in my password for the user that I set up in the Drush config. So you start doing that. Your statuses, your installs, your enables and stuff, your simple commands running relatively fine. Then you get into your Drush SQL CLI command, which, if we look down here, reverse scrolling, yeah. So this SQL CLI command, what this does is this tells your database, tells your Drupal database to run this SQL command. And usually what we'll do is we'll do an SQL dump from here, and we will dump it in the command, which will then write that to the database, and now you're syncing your databases together. Well, in order to do that, you need to put two Drush aliases in one command on your command line. Well, as soon as you do that, your username and password authentication system just goes belly up, because it prompts you for both of your passwords for both of the servers at the same time, and then populates the first server password with please enter password for the other server. And so you end up in this sort of thing where things are broken. So enable SSH key authentication. There's a whole documentation on that. I can post some links onto the forum user group to explain a little bit more on how to do that. But long story short, we get SSH access turned on, so we're now using private keys, and we have authenticated keys that are set up on the server. So now if I do two Drush commands, to 2 different servers, I don't have to type in a password with the exception of the password that's saved in my key store. So all that's well and good. So I do a database pull of my database from production into my local environment because I just want to see what's going on, because for some reason I'm trying to do this command and it's just not working. Something had to be broken because 10 minutes had gone by and I was like, this thing's still spinning here. I don't know what's happening. So I cancel it and I do this SQL dump, this Drush SQL dump command. I try to dump it into a file and I do the verbose. If you're ever looking to debug your Drush commands, you do a -v, right? And -v is your verbose. And so what it does is it prints out every single thing that it's doing when it's doing something. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm probably getting some sort of authentication error, something bad is happening here. No, actually, everything was going fine. So I was like, all right, I'll just let it go. Well, if I had only waited an extra 5 minutes from the 10 minutes I waited before, 15 minutes, it finished dumping the file. Now, we have some pretty funky firewalls at work right now, and things are a little bit slow. There's some lost packets, some really slow download speeds, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out my database was 4.5 gigabytes. My Drupal production database was 4.5 gigabytes. What's the problem? Exactly. What's the problem? Why? Well, what's the problem with a 4.5 gigabyte database? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is with a 4.5 gigabyte database. If you're trying to sync a 4.5 gigabyte database from one environment to another, it has to put that database somewhere. So you now are transferring 4.5 gigabytes of data from one server to another, and then you have to populate 4.5 gigabytes of data into your MySQL database. Well, unless you have a lot of memory allocated to your PHP code on your servers, that's not going to happen. So I set out on a quest to reduce the size of my database. Shout outs to the Upstate Web Slack in the Drupal chat, to Justin Winter, to Rob Trison, and all of the other people who can't remember SQL commands, which you can actually use this SQL query drush command here. And what it does is it actually just runs an actual SQL query onto your database. And what I was able to do was pump this SQL query command into my production database. And actually, he wrote a script that gave me a text dump of all of the tables in my database and how big they were. Well, it turns out that I had we went from 4.5 to 900. We had a 3.6 gigabyte access log table in our database. Well, for those of us who are on Acquia, and those of us who are not on Acquia, the statistics module is very, terrible. It should be disabled in production unless you have a very specific reason to be using the statistics module. Because what happened was the statistics module was logging every single action on my site in a 3.5-month rotating window and dumping it all into the database. So that's 3.6 gigabytes of data. So you'd say, well, now you have a 900 megabyte database. That's pretty good, right? No, that's not. There are a couple of tables in there that we're caching things because we don't have a Varnish server in front. We're caching the database stuff. So yeah, your cache tables are going to be a little bit big, but you can exclude those. So I excluded those. I'm still at about 500 to 600 megabytes. Still too much for me. So turns out my access log tables were huge. Those are gone now. But then it turns out that my field revisions were being saved in my database, and the table was about 500 to 600 megabytes of just the revisions log. I believe that was the other one. I might be mistaken. You can check Slack to see my conquest of harnessing the database. But basically, what ends up happening is I'm a bit ashamed to say it, but we have raw HTML and CSS and some JavaScript inside of body fields on a lot of our content types. We won't be doing that for very long. Now that I'm here, well, as long as it takes until we get our new site up and running. So anyway, the moral of the story is we had one content type that had, I believe, 567 revisions on it of those tables were 190 megabytes, and I still can't quite get those fully trimmed down without upgrading a module that is running a beta version of a module that's 7 years old. Not 7, 6, 5, 2011, 5 years old right now. That could possibly break some field collection stuff. Anyway, what actually was we use a lot. We're at the Attorney General's office. We interface with the public a lot, and we are complaints about something. So what we did was we created lots and lots of web forms on our site. Probably about 50 web forms on our site in total. One of the biggest ones is the comments and questions to the Attorney General. So it's like a direct line to the people who are filtering the emails that we get from the public that go to the Attorney General. That was the gigantic table, because what happened was we had that specific form had about 45,000 individual responses inside of it, and that was building up our very long story short, 4.5 gigabytes down to 160 megabytes in about in a couple days time. And the only way that I could clear 45,000 responses from our web form, which, by the way, I backed it all up. It's all in Excel files. It's on they're on our server. This dates all the way back to 2011 when this form was originally put in here. So we're talking about 5 years of data that has just been collecting the database and making things slow and slow and slow and slow and slow and slow. The reason I found out that this was bad was I tried to update 5 of our press releases, because being new, I didn't know that I had to check the box to put it onto the home page as well, because I didn't realize that our view didn't automatically do that. And I brought our entire server down because it was trying to update like 900 megabytes of a database over and over and over again. And so I said, something's wrong here, we got to fix this. So that being said, the only way that you can delete 45,000 records out of your table is not using the Drupal GUI, as you might have assumed, because the only way that Drupal has to do it with web form by default is delete all, or delete yes 45,000 times. So that's 2 clicks times 45,000. That's 90,000 clicks. And I couldn't hire an intern to do that. So what I had to do was I had to write these custom Drush commands. And I would not recommend this to anybody. I would recommend that you first build the situation that doesn't get you backed up into 45,000 individual responses into your database at once. I would recommend that you architect that in a more manageable way. But the only way that I could clear those out is by using an interface that actually targeted the specific web form results data table with a NID that equaled the actual form number, and with submission IDs, SIDs, which were less than the number that I had backed up to. And while my server kept returning 500 errors because PHP memory limits probably were exhausted trying to delete 45,000, my PHP timeouts probably reached their maximum number, and I just kept getting 500 errors trying to delete all this stuff. It deleted all of those tables in probably about 30 seconds total. So sometimes you're backed into a corner. You're pulling out somebody else's site. You're poor people that have to take the sites that I've developed over time. You know, before I came to the Attorney General's office, you know, the poor people doing DCJS sites and state police sites that have to deal with my code, however I put that together. Like, sometimes they're probably going to have to go in and do some Drush stuff. You know, so that is why Drush exists. That is why it's here, is to help us through these times that we talked about Drush last month, and this is a very big use case for Drush on my end. So 4.5 gigs to 160 megabytes. I can run commands on my server now. I production database, my test database yesterday in probably about 13 to 20 seconds. So we're talking about a massive undertaking to pull this thing through. But in the end, you know, we think about it and we put in all this time and all this effort into, you know, making things work and making things architected the correct way and all of this stuff. And we think to yourself, like, well, is all this time that I put into this worth it? Well, yeah. I think it is, because, well, I guess it depends, but in this case, yeah, it definitely was, because before we have time to fully develop a new website and put it out on Drupal 8 and put all the bells and whistles in it, we're going to be running on this Drupal 7 site, and we're going to be trying to deal with a 4.5 gigabyte database. Not going to happen. We need to fix these little problems now so that we can move on and do this in the future. And I know now this SQLQ command, this is the short command, SQLQ. I know that is the command that I'm going to be able to use whenever I have a really bad problem and I'm getting 500 errors and I don't have the ability to set my PHP timeouts to, you know, infinite time to let all this stuff process in the background and, you know, give these things 150 gigabytes of RAM. So that's what I want to talk about with Drush today. We're going to do some more Drupal 8 stuff next month. I wanted to talk about some theming things. So if you're into theming Drupal 8, you know, let me know. I'd like to talk about some theming of Drupal 8. I'd like to talk a little bit maybe about Docker next month. Docker, if you haven't heard of it, is just so cool. About talking about as well as unified development environments, so that we're all working on the same page. I'm looking at somebody here in the room that knows a lot about that right now. He's looking at his phone, so we'll just pretend that we're not talking about him. But you know, I really want to make these meetings useful for everybody involved. You know, we have a lot of people on WebEx. If we're having some issues with WebEx, we're gonna try to nip those in the bud and make sure that we don't have any issues going forward. If we do, then, you know, whatever. You got to deal with it. You didn't come here, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm really glad to see that there's so many people in the room, though. It's really, really nice. I know that there's a lot of people we have in New York City, a lot of people in downtown Albany, and this WebEx is for you guys. Hopefully you can hear everything that I said. Just kidding. I just pretended that I had an audio problem. That was my real voice. So, without further ado, I'm going to let everybody out a half an hour early, unless you got a question.
Yeah, so I have a question about, so what exactly you did for the project of cleaning up your database, what pretty much you went to the database and clear out deleting stuff, right? Which unless you really know what you're doing, could end up deleting the record you didn't mention, you know, mean to delete, you know what I'm saying? So how you go about, did you start with that version and the staging and then you go to the production, delete those records, or you could just go in production and just delete it?
So, I don't normally write SQLQ queries in Drush, but when I do it in production. But in all seriousness, I did. Yes, I had to do it in production because production, dev, and stage were totally broken. Now, I did write some queries inside of PHPMyAdmin on dev and test to make sure that I was getting all the right data. I did lots of Google searches to make sure that the tables that I was doing, that I was looking to clear were the correct tables. In most instances, you don't delete the tables, you truncate the tables, with the exception of web form data. Those can be deleted because it's just the data based off of the table that's already been structured.
But you had a backup strategy in place, right?
I did back up my 4.5 gigabyte database before I made the big access log purge. Then after I did the access log purge and I was down to 900 megabytes, I did do a full production backup of that. And then
and you knew how to restore those backups.
Yes. The SQL CLI command is how you would restore them. A worst case scenario, it's on a separate server, which is on a bare metal restore, and called it a day. But not like tons and tons of people use the Attorney General's website. Just kidding. But yes, I had plenty of backups in place. Like, this is not something for the faint of heart. Definitely not something that you should just take on willy-nilly. This is when no other solution is possible. This is something that is available to us if we have to do it. If you go back to work today and you start writing Drush SQLQ commands just on a whim, that's on you, bro. Okay? I am not to be held responsible for this. This is not an endorsement to do this, but it's an endorsement. This is do this if you need to do it. If there's no other way and you can't find a way around it, do your research before you do this stuff. But this is an option.
I may have missed this because I was on my phone, but I was wondering why do it through Drush versus a MySQL SSH session? Like, you're writing.
I don't have SSH access, so it would have been a sort of roundabout. So our SQL servers are, so we have a separate SQL and separate Apache server, and the only way that you can get to the SQL server is through the Apache server, because nobody has access directly to the MySQL server. It keeps it locked down. So I would have had to SSH into there and then SSH into MySQL server, which would have been fine, but then I wouldn't have I don't know SQL, right? But I know Drush to wrap around the SQL stuff. So I guess you could have done it that way. You could have done it either way. But I know that the way that I was doing it gave me the ability to say, all right, now I'm going to do a Drush backup of this thing, SQL backup of this thing before I possibly hose all of my data.
So the advantage being that you had your Drush, your other Drush SQL commands at your disposal.
Yeah. I've been using Drush more and more recently, and it's just been so incredibly powerful. Because when I came in, we didn't have Drush on the servers at all, and I was walked through the documentation on how we make backups of servers, and they were custom shell scripts that were written that you had to run through manually, download through SFTP, and that's when I found out at first that the database was. I was like, why is the backup file, the Drush backup file for this, like 5 gigabytes? I didn't understand why it was so big, and so that sort of led me down the path of, well, where is all this? The files are big, things like that, but it was the SQL database that was 4.5 gigabytes that really was taking up all that space. So we're running a bit more performant now. I have not tried to promote 5 press releases to the front page yet since doing this, but maybe we'll try that at the next change control time. Because if the site goes down, then we have an excuse this time.
So one question related to your new position you mentioned about. How big is the Drupal team you in charge of or part of?
So right now, It's myself. We have a consultant, Revathi. Roxanne is on the team as well. She's actually running a very big project where we're talking about creating a whole new internet site as well as some intranet stuff. So Roxanne's got a lot of knowledge on Drupal, and we hired somebody else who starts next week. He's going to be learning all about Drupal from scratch, which will be molding the minds of our youth. So I don't know if he's younger than I am or not, but he's younger than the oldest person in the world. So yeah, so it was Pete Cachetti's position over at the AG's office that I'm running at the team. That's awesome stuff. Really good. We got there's only upward motion from where we started, I think. Again, not saying anything bad about the previous people who have taken care of this. You work with what you have, and if it was built a certain way, then that's access logs built up in the database. Nobody necessarily knew to look for that. 4.5 gigabyte database, sure, yeah. But when I came in, I was like, whoa, that's much too big. As we all know, I could literally talk all day long about anything. So literally anything.
I won't bring up Doctor Who then.
Yeah, don't bring up Doctor Who. And that Christmas special, something else. So any other questions? Cool. So next month, let's look for some Drupal 8 stuff. Let's look for some more things. If you guys haven't joined up yet, the Upstate Web Group Slack, upstateweb.herokuapp.com. Get signed up on there. Play with Drush. Don't play with SQL unless you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, break some stuff locally before you break it. Cool. So everybody have a good month, and we'll see you guys next month. Last Wednesday, I'll be sending out all this stuff. We have links to all the meeting things, notes, presentations, all that stuff that'll be on the page later on, today or tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.